What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, here we are. Obviously, happy St. Patrick's Day. I don't know if Fede was actually really meant to wear green today. I remember him wearing the green back a couple of weeks ago with the lucky shirt. I don't know if he actually meant it this time. I hope you do say that, Fede. But happy St. Patty's Day to those that do celebrate or just want to have a good drink. That's for sure. I know Ralph is a big Guinness fan. So I think he might have to pour one for today. But obviously, I think a lot of fans of Cerro Porteño can definitely pour out some drinks after their qualification in the Libertadores, heading off to the group stage. We'll talk about how they fared against Fortaleza over there. We'll talk about what's been going on in the local league. And if one team could indeed run away with the title as early as this weekend, especially with things that are going on, we'll talk about what happened to a certain Paraguayan, where I took the trip to England to see him and what he performed. Who is it? I mean, you probably already guessed it, but we'll talk about that in just a bit. But yeah, let's go straight to someone that is feeling very much lucky, considering the fact that I think, obviously St. Patrick's Day, but I think one for today, I think Cerro fans can feel very, very lucky, not just because of the way that they won, but they also get some money in them, a good $3 million for making the group stage of the Copa Libertadores. Fede Perez, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Roberto. It's nice to see you again. Hi to Ralph. Unfortunately, Maria couldn't make it this time around. We'll have her on the next episode, like always. We definitely got to talk about so many things this week. I mean, so much has been happening. About the green shirt, yeah, I thought about it this time, Roberto. You mentioned it last week, and this time when I was picking up my shirt, I was like, I'm gonna go green again, just because we're obviously on top of St. Patrick's, and I know how big it is over there for you guys, especially the United States people. Just have another reason to drink down here in Paraguay, and they've had a lot of reasons lately, especially Cerro Porteño fans, to celebrate. I mean, after getting into the group stage, and in what a way they did it, right? In quite fashion. Against the Brazilian team, we definitely got to talk about what they did against Fortaleza. They had a long run to make it here, and Facundo Saba, the new coach, has definitely brought what they needed. They got all wins so far with him, at least in Libertadores. Not so good in the local league. They got to catch up now. Everybody has to catch up pretty much to Libertad. They've been running away with it pretty much since they won in the Apertura. What is it now? 4 wins in a row for Libertad. They take Olimpia this weekend in the Clásico Blanco y Negro, the white and black Clásico that we have here in Paraguay. That's going to be quite a showdown, especially because Olimpia has a new manager. We got to talk about the preview of that game, but I wanted to throw a couple of things out there on this intro, especially because the women's game has also been going on. The women's league started. We're around week 3 now. This next weekend, Olimpia is going to take on Cerro Porteño. Olimpia, that was champion last week. They pretty much won everything here on the local league, and they won a big game already on the second week, playing against Libertad Limpeño with a late free kick from one of their best players, pretty much on the last match of the game. And then we also got a lot of things going on with the beach soccer. I mean, the national team is catching people's attention. I've been following this tournament also. The Copa America has been going on. The Copa America that also gives 3 spots to the South American teams for the next World Cup that's going to be played at the end of the year. And, we have our goalkeeper, Joao Rolón. He's top 3 in the world, according to Beach Soccer Worldwide. Last year, the ranking had him on top 3. And now we have Mincianes Medina scoring from everywhere. We have a couple of injured players, but this team is looking really well, and they qualified already on the top 4. They got to play the semifinals now. They got 2 games. They got to win at least 1 to make it to the World Cup to clinch one of those 3 spots. So I'm feeling good about this team, Roberto. And I'm hearing the manager, the new coach, Joaquin Molas, on different interviews, and he's talking about this team can be world champions. So he's catching people's attention. We don't usually have a Paraguayan team in football with these kind of feelings, with these kind of sensations, and it's great. I mean, we're always strong in beach soccer. We've always been ever since FIFA took over. But we're seeing even young players coming about in this tournament, like Thiago Barrios, only 16 years old. Just to throw it out there on this intro, since I'm definitely gonna talk about the first division here in Paraguay, and we got a lot of Libertadores going on also. But I mean, it's always nice to talk about women's football and beach soccer also, which we always try to throw it out here in Guarani Vision.
I always find it funny that a landlocked country, who is obviously one of the few landlocked countries, is so good at beach soccer. Who would have thought? But Paraguay is amongst the best ones, Ralph. But I think obviously we are speaking, of course, during a time as well. And this is actually something that I actually didn't have mentioned in our intro. But obviously, I think one of the things that is also talked about here in Paraguay is kind of the issue of the control of money. And the one person I talk about is Pablo Ceballos. He was in the news, a former national team player, played a lot in Russia and Mexico. He's been kind of in the news recently because of former players and ex teammates owing him tons of money, or at least giving out sums of over 100,000 and much more. I mean, this is an issue that, again, is not what I had to mention, but it came into my mind that it kind of does happen a lot in Paraguayan football. And sometimes you worry about what this really means for the development of the game. It's just that kind of money can go just a long way to help a player. But at the same time, it also shows the kind of the vices that a player can have, and how sometimes they can be successful and how sometimes that they can't because of that.
Hey guys, yeah. Okay, you get me with the hard questions to start, Roberto. But first, I think we should explain to people that don't follow Paraguayan football as closely as we do that a lot of this is part of the informality of Paraguayan football, because this money we're talking about is what are often called incentive payments, which is still allowed, is not prohibited. But what you often get towards the end of the season is when one team is chasing the title, they give some money to the team that's going to be playing the rival should they win, like a win bonus and incentive. But this kind of stuff is not a formal contract or anything like that, so it becomes cash in hand very often, or it can become, it's like passed through one person to another. Like I say, there's nothing specifically outlawing this, but it's kind of an unwritten rule that you wouldn't actually transfer wire this money to somebody, right? It's given cash in hand. And so then, of course, with cash and informal things, somebody might hold on to it, and there's no receipts, there's no way to know what's going on. And so we do hear of this. And what's happened in the case of Pablo Ceballos is actually someone has brought up a legal issue whereby he sold a house on behalf of Jose Ortigosa, another ex-player, who then has said, well, he didn't give me the right commission or something from the house sale. So this is a legal thing. But then what's happened is from that, other players have come out of the woodwork and said, well, actually, he owes me money from this incentive payment relating to Ameliano. And then, people are talking about this kind of thing. I wouldn't say, just to be fair on Ceballos, I don't think he's the only person involved in this kind of thing. This is very widespread. I also, from what I know, I think he suffered a bit in his move to Russia. If you remember a long time ago, about 10 years ago, no, over 10 years ago now, he moved to Russia. There was always an issue there with the agents at the time. And I think Olympia and the commissions, and I think even in the end, CAS had to get involved, the Court of Arbitration, to try and work it all out. And we're talking about $1 million commissions. So that was a lot of money. So I think there's been a lot of issues throughout his career where these kind of informal things have sometimes gone his way and sometimes not gone his way. But it's an interesting insight into football. And actually, we're going to talk about Olympia have a new coach. Well, just quickly, like, who's paying Diego Aguirre? Diego Aguirre has a lot of money. He has a high salary. Olympia have been banned again because they owe debt, so they're not able to bring in players. They're under that suspension again. So where's this money coming from? Well, there's always a director or somebody on the board who's going to pay that salary. It's not coming from the club itself. It's going to come from a person. We see this with Libertad, for example, that are basically funded by Horacio Cartes, or have been until now. Now he's under pressure from the US government. That's going to start changing. You're going to see players like Tacuara, who's earning in dollars. He's not going to be able to earn in dollars anymore after June. So let's see what happens to people like him. So all of this is going on sometimes behind the scenes in Paraguay, but I don't want to say it's like a shady thing. It's an open secret. It's just that it's the only way things can get done, basically. I mean, otherwise you don't get Diego Aguirre in Paraguay because through the club finances system, they can't pay for him. Cerro's the same, by the way, just so we name all the big clubs. I mean, the Sapag family, they have all that money and they're the ones putting that money in, often out of their own pocket. It's not even through the good money they're going to generate through the Copa Libertadores, which is actually over $4 million now because they won the previous rounds. They got 1 billion guaraníes last night, which is like what, $150,000 from gate receipts. So they can be expecting at least $500,000 more or less from the 3 home games. But even with all of that, is not enough. And player sales, they need this extra money coming in. So that's just kind of how it works in Paraguay. It's you have these, what we call, I guess, these like silent investors who are always helping things out with money.
Always some stuff that is murky out there. It's not all fun and games in Paraguayan football. You might see it on the pitch, but behind the pitch, there's a lot of things going on. Let's stick to what we saw on the pitch. Obviously, we saw Cerro Porteño take on Fortaleza. We didn't speak in the first game. We actually recorded right beforehand, where they took on Fortaleza at the Castelhao over there in Brazil. It was a very tight game over there in Brazil. A penalty save from John Fernandez, who really has been the standout player for Cerro in these 2 legs, and maybe even at the team itself. Diego Churingo was able to give Cerro Porteño a famous win in Brazil. Now coming into the second leg, which a fantastic stat for those that everyone doesn't know, Cerro Porteño have never beaten a Brazilian side in a home and away match against in the Copa Libertadores. So this was big pressure coming from Cerro Porteño, and it went out right from the get-go. Carrizo scoring in the 38th minute, and obviously another great goal, a fantastic goal from Aquino. 2 players who, Ralph, we'll talk about that in a bit, were finally being able to work together under Facundo Sava, and all that giving them the 3-1 win on aggregate and to advance to the group stage. I mean, yeah, I'll go to Ralph on this one because I think this is a statement win for Cerro Porteño as a whole into demonstrating that there were doubts about what Facundo Sava have done. Obviously, we saw in the Super Clásico kind of how they kind of self-collapsed. We even saw that in the game against Luque, where, they obviously had to come back from 2-0 down to be leading 3-2, only to tie 3-3 at the end. But a result like this against a Brazilian side who, obviously are no pushover when it comes to playing them in the Copa Libertadores, but at least for this type of result to happen, it shows that maybe Facundo Sava has finally found the team that he wants to work with. And that could mean, utilizing a lot of players that perhaps were not in the best of interest of many fans, or maybe just not as trustworthy, but definitely proving them wrong. And we'll talk about one bright gem that I'm sure you want to talk about that could indeed be on the radar of a lot of teams in the future. But it shows that, for someone like Sava, he's demonstrating that he could indeed take the opportunity to utilize this side to challenge and to really play with authority. At least that's what my impressions was. So I was wondering what you thought, what we saw at La Noria last night.
Yeah, I like what you say about playing with authority. I think that's where Sava has brought something a bit different from Chiqui Arce. He's also brought, I would say there's 2 players he's done something differently to Arce, which is working very well. Wilda Vieira, who was mostly in the reserves and wasn't really starting week in, week out. He's become very important in central midfield. And I think it's just interesting to have the left foot, right foot combination there in the middle. And he's doing very well. But also another player that there was, you wouldn't think of as a central defender was Baez, Gabriel Baez, who was brought in as a left back by Chiqui Arce. But he started being used as a central defender almost as an emergency because the new signing, Brock, hasn't been able to play in Copa Libertadores. He wasn't registered in time for these preliminary rounds. He will be able to play the group stage, but for that, Baez had to play in the middle, and Baez, I think, has been very good as well. So there's a couple of personnel changes, I would say, from Sava. But then, yeah, the game management and the way they played, I thought was really interesting because Cerro had a problem that they are not a team that's very good on counter-attacking. That's not really their style. It's possession build-up. That's how it always was with Chiqui Arce. That's the kind of team he's inherited. So they weren't going to be able to sit back and hit Fortaleza on the counter-attack. If they tried that, it wouldn't work. So they had to try and, plant their feet in the ground or put the flag in the ground and try and play a bit of football as well. But what he did very well is they kind of did it in sectors, because there were times when they would find the chances to attack, and there were times when they really slowed the game down, like just after Carrizo's goal until halftime. they just took the sting out really well, I thought, just controlling the rhythm, the pace. And who's doing that is Aquino and Carrizo. That's what they're good at. That's what they're there for. And what he's finally got is, we talked about it a lot, the end of last year with what Arce couldn't do was get those two playing well together for whatever reason. I didn't have time to look up the stat, but the fact that they both scored in the same game, Pachi Carrizo and Claudio Aquino, it has to be one of the very few times, or maybe the only time, they both scored in the same game. So that just shows you that some of the stuff Saba has been working on. Because if you get those two contributing to goals, then you take a bit of pressure off Morales, off Churin, definitely off Moreno, who's not playing well at all. So by having goals coming from other areas, I think that's helping them too. And then, just about how well they're doing. Well, this is only the second time they've ever started the Libertadores by winning all the first 4 games. They did it 2019 with Chiqui Arce. And so this is, I mean, the best start they've ever had. And like you said, the first time they've knocked out a Brazilian side over 2 legs. So it's a very positive moment, I think, for Cerro. For sure, Fortaleza is not as strong as a Palmeiras, Flamengo, the kind of teams they could end up playing in the group stages and will eventually have to play a knockout should they get there again. So then you need Jean to be even better than he has been, because he was very impressive. But remember, Jean's coming back from an injury. So if he's playing this well in recovery mode, I think there's still a lot more for him to give. And I think it's a positive time for Cerro. Let's see what the draw throws up. And we should get excited about this team. They're doing very well.
I love what I saw from Cerro Porteño, not only on this game against Fortaleza, on both games against Fortaleza. I'm loving what I'm seeing from this team ever since Saba took over. I mean, this coach, the way he's managed to even solve problems, right? I mean, Ralph started talking about the defense and Brock signing, coming in late, not being able to play the Libertadores games, which is what you needed him for. So there he had a problem in defense. He really solved that situation, even surprising everybody by putting Gabriel Baez back there. And he really did a wonderful job. And even on this last game, he didn't have Daniel Rivas on the left back. So he kind of needed to move Gabriel Baez to his natural spot. And he ended up putting Piris da Mota right next to Juan Patiño, the captain and leader of the defense. And even Piris da Mota looked great. And we know he does not feel comfortable playing in defense. He's a midfielder, but Saba is just hitting every right key. And even midfield with Wilder Vieira, that's also been another thing that, just like Ralph mentioned, has been one of the decisions that he's made ever since he came. He found the starting team. I mean, ever since we saw that first Libertadores game with Saba, we saw that he had a starting team, and that starting team has always responded. And he definitely is bringing in that different atmosphere, I believe, in the locker room. After the game, Juan Patiño talked with the media, and he talked about the differences, right, between the Francisco Arce's era and this new coach that they are under. And he talked that, Chiqui Arce was there so long that it wasn't just about football lately. It was such a personal relationship with the coach that it was probably getting in the way of certain things that had to do with football, with decision making and stuff. And that's why the team was not looking as good as it is now, I believe. Even the Super Clásico, they were the better team pretty much the whole game. Even this, I think they deserved more on the local league. Now they're going to put their heads back there, but just the way they solved it against Fortaleza. I mean, I know Ralph was not on the same page with Saba about putting in Aquino and Pachi Carrizo together, but hey, they had their best game, Ralph, together. And when those two are clicking, or just one of them is clicking out there, I mean, they got a difference maker. And what a goal from Claudio Aquino. That's going to be one of the best goals this week in Libertadores. I don't know if you guys saw Hulk's goal also in Mineiro, but this one is up there also. I mean, Claudio Aquino just hitting it and putting it, and what a goal. And Pachi Carrizo also has these kind of situations. Also, he scored from midfield last season. So you're always expecting these kind of flashes from these kind of players. I love to see him them play together, or for the coach to find a way to play them together. They haven't needed their young stars yet, like Robert Morales, but Churin is coming up. So you're seeing players level rising right now individually. And that speaks well about the new manager, Roberto. And they got momentum. I think I said it when Saba took over. If they win just a couple of games, they're still building something special. And look at them now. They're in the group stage. They have the fans by their side, not just with the results, but also by the way they're playing, the way they resolved against Fortaleza. I mean, that match was over right after that second goal.
It was. And I think there's also been one player that I wanted to mention that I'm sure you guys are definitely excited about, and that's Alexis Farinha, someone who's come in. And, for me, just the way that he's been playing, I mean, yeah, he could have gotten an assist, a really lovely assist on Federico Fernandez's goal. It went offside, but Ralph, I mean, from what I've seen from him, and I've seen bits of him, and I don't know how he's been doing at the academy beforehand, but I'm just thinking of someone that it looks like he's been playing forever, or at least he's been playing for a long time with the Cerro side. He just seems so unbothered and composed that, this could be another gem that Facundo Sava could indeed rely on for this season.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is credit to Sava because, of course, this kid was there with Chiqui Arce. Of course, he's very young. Well, I say very young. He's from the same age group as Julio Enciso. So he played Sudamericano with Julio Enciso when he was in the under-15s. He played with Hugo Cuenca, who's in Milan right now in the youth sides. He was actually at Capiatá along with Cuenca. So Capiatá were, when they had money, they were getting lots of good players in and trying to build them up. Capiatá, as we know, have fallen away to the wayside because of lots of issues that we were talking about earlier about money. So Cuenca managed to make the jump to Milan, straight to Europe. Farinha, no, he ended up in Cerro. And like I was saying, he was in that Sudamericano with Paraguay, along with Enciso, who's now in Brighton. So he's kind of seeing the quality that he could show. He's very brave. That's what we've seen, right? Very brave on the ball. I mean, I love it when these new youth players come in and they're not scared. So another player I like is Mati Segovia, who does that at Guarani, who's doing very well at the moment. They just come in, they're no fear, and they're looking to go forward the whole time. But you can see he's very technical. He's very technically gifted. The pass he mentioned, but also the way he skipped around a player that I can't remember who it was, but down the right-hand side towards the end of the game, he just left him for dead. So he's going to be really exciting to watch. Of course, we've only seen 10 minutes here and maybe like 15 minutes against Luqueño, so we don't know how he would do, game time, physicality, and all that kind of thing. But it's a really exciting start. And again, yeah, credit to Sava, because in the moment he comes on in that game, he has Galeano on the bench, he has Sergio Diaz, he has Moreno on the bench, he has Enzo Jimenez, because Enzo comes on after him. So he has a lot of big players he could have brought on in a very important game that's, like we're saying, is worth $3 million. And no, he brings in the 18-year-old and he did really well. So yeah, definitely an exciting one to look out for. And he comes, like I'm saying, from pedigree when you look at Enciso and Cuenca.
Yeah, Chiqui Arce also promoted several players. I remember players coming in, having 15, 10 minutes maybe, or a young Noguera, forward also, I remember coming in late in the season. I mean, he tried to put in players, but they never came through as to winning a spot, right? So we'll see how the manager also handles the situation, having an 18-year-old that's coming in and making a difference pretty much with the ball, without the ball. He pretty much ran the team the other day and gave it a shot against Luqueño when they were losing, when they were down 2-0, and he came in and really took over. And that was not an easy situation for him. And now his first Libertadores game. So they're putting him out there to see how he reacts, right, to these whole situations. And he did not miss a pass. And the first ball he gets, he puts the forward right in front of on the goal for a one-on-one situation. Fernando Fernandez that was caught offside, but that could have ended in a goal. And pretty much everybody here in Paraguay is talking about Alexis Farinha, Asuncion bound. I think he's still in school, even with just 18 years old. But you can see that this kid is different, and it's all going to depend on Cerro Porteño now. Just the way they treat him, the way they're going to handle him, how many minutes they're going to give him this season, the role that he can win in the team. You can see that the players, that his teammates have a lot of confidence in him. And I think this is just a kid that's just going to keep on growing. I hope he's not another Sergio Diaz. I saw Sergio Diaz back on this team past weekend against Deportivo Luqueño. And yeah, Sergio Diaz was up there in heaven when he was playing in Real Madrid, but he's right now second, third option in this team, to be honest. And he's having a rough time to come back to his best form. And that was a player just like Alexis Fariña, that when he came through, when you saw him on those first games, he was totally different. So I'm hoping Alexis Fariña has a totally different future, just like Julio Enciso, like Huesca, that are playing in Europe. I hope we see him over there very soon, Roberto.
Yes, we can hope that he indeed does go indeed very, very soon. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see, obviously, what happens in the Copa Libertadores, as we have, obviously, 3 teams in the competition. A reminder that the draw is not until the later of the month, so we still have some time until we decide which Paraguay teams will be playing against the other South American sides. But just a reminder, Olimpia is in pot 1, Libertad is in pot 2, and Cerro Porteño are in pot 4 of the 32 teams that are involved. In the Sudamericana, we also have 32 teams and 2 zero sides that are Paraguayan, Guarani in pot 2, and Tacuaru in pot 4. So we'll wait and see what happens to all the 5 Paraguayan sides participating in the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana. As we switch gears now to what's been going on in the local league as well. Obviously, we are speaking, like I mentioned, after the 3-3 draw between Cerro and Luqueño, but I think it's honestly starting to come into a position where, you know, it's so early to say. We're already in March. So you look at the performances that we've been seeing from other teams, and it seems like there's no stopping Libertad right now. I mean, they're still top of the league. They haven't lost a game yet. 6 wins, 1 draw, 19 points, 5 points ahead of Club Guarani with 14. And, you know, I'll go to Fede on this one, because obviously the big game happening this weekend will be Olimpia Libertad. I mean, Olimpia come in with a new manager. Obviously, Diego Aguirre is the new one, and we're going to talk about him in a bit, about how he's hopefully could change his Olimpia side as a whole. But I don't know, man. I mean, are we starting to really see Libertad run away with it now this season? I mean, they've kind of rested themselves, considering they don't really have to play Libertadores yet. Still got a couple more weeks until that is decided, but they just looked really, really good so far in the league. And it's going to take a monumental achievement from either a Guarani, a Cerro, or an Olimpia to stop this side. But if Libertad can extend the gap with Olimpia a bit further, and, you know, Guarani will be taking on Trinidense, a Trinidense side who kind of fell off they've lost their last 2, who was kind of the surprise darlings right now. They're currently in 6th, but it seems like, at least from tradition and what we've seen from Libertad in previous seasons, that they seem to be the ones that are running away with it, at least in the Apertura.
Yeah, so far, I would say, you know, Libertad has looked as the best team, not just because they're on the first spot, just because the way they're playing and they're resolving games. I mean, just when they have tight situations, they have late goals, they bring in a super sub that they clearly have many of those sitting on the bench, and they solve any situation. I remember the Trinidense match, and that was a phenomenal game, and just the way they solved it on those last minutes, and they were playing away. Libertad have more than enough, right? And they showed it before, even with Carnero on the bench and their coach. He's had a while on this team, and you could say that there's a lot of work on this Libertad squad. I'm loving what I'm seeing from them, especially because of the players that have come back. Tito Villalba, he's having a great tournament alongside Lorenzo Melgarejo, who also ended last year on top level, scoring constantly for his team. They're unstoppable, to be honest. I don't know how Olimpia is going to do it this weekend with their new manager. They looked different last week already against General Caballero in Ciudad del Este. I think, you know, Julio Cáceres leaving and the players knowing that there's a new coach already watching them, trying to change the situation. So a lot of players were playing for their spot, for their position, to keep that position for the next game. And they pretty much played their hearts out last game, and they looked a lot better. But Diego Aguirre has a lot of work to do. They need to fix the problems in defense. He's going to have to solve that situation in midfield. Is Richard Ortiz going to play, the captain? His weight on this team is very important, and just how you're going to handle the young players also, because you're having Manuel Romero coming in lately on these games. He's one of the new faces probably on the Olimpia squad. Julio Cáceres was bringing him in, and Ayrton Garcia, who was the coach for these last 2 games before Diego Aguirre took over, also brought Manuel Romero as a sub. And he's yet to score, yet to make the difference, but he's getting a lot of game time. And Olimpia has a lot of players like him waiting for their chances. So when a new coach takes over, he's going to look at his options. He's going to look at everything he has. Maybe he's going to throw us an Antolin Alcaraz on this first game against Libertad. You don't know what a new coach can do, to be honest. And you got to throw something at this Libertad, Roberto, because they already know what they're doing. And Garnero knows very well everything that happens on the local league. So he knows what he's going to go up against when he faces Olimpia. It's no problem for him going back there. They're going to be the away team, but they're going to be the team that's going to look to attack and to keep that first spot. But hey, I think it's too early yet. These are my 2 candidates. I said at the beginning of the season, Libertad and Olimpia, they're going to face each other this weekend. To me, this is the big test for these teams. I mean, if Olimpia does not win this game, it's over for them this season, and Libertad is just going to run away with it, even though they still got to play Cerro on the match right after Olimpia. But I don't know, Ralph, this Libertad side, if they stay healthy, if they have these players running hot like they're doing, this team looks really hard to stop.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it's really interesting, especially on Libertad, how Garnero, since this time last year, the team has evolved. So this time last year was very similar, that they're winning lots of games, but they were scoring so many goals. They were unstoppable. So no one even thought about their defense because they were just scoring so many goals and winning, and they ended up getting a record points total. Then in the Clausura, something went wrong badly with the defense. I mean, it was really hard to understand what was going wrong. And all of a sudden, the defense was a big issue. This year, he's managed to kind of fix it with Barbosa and Vieira as the 2 central defenders, but they're not scoring quite as many goals. And one thing is, of course, Roque is injured. There's no Julio Enciso because he's in Brighton. So compared to the Apertura last year, they are missing that. And if for as much as Melgarejo and Villalba are doing well, I think Fede mentioned it, they're scoring quite late in games. So they're not like blowing sides away. So the defense has become much more important. And actually, I think they've only conceded 3 goals so far this season. They have the best defense. So it's really interesting the way, and this is why Garnero has been so successful in Paraguay. And he did it with Olimpia as well. Is when the problems arrive, he finds the solution and he changes it around. If you remember way back with Guarani, I remember the end of that title run, he was just winning 1-0, 1-0, 1-0 because he was just squeezing the right part out of them. So he's a really good coach. He has won, if you want to include the Copa Paraguay game, which was abandoned between Olimpia and Libertad, but Libertad were winning 4-0. He won 5 in a row against Olimpia until October last year, when it was a similar game to this one. It was in the Manuel Ferreira. Olimpia were pretty much out of the title race unless they won, but their rival was Cerro, no Libertad. And they beat Libertad 1-0 to end this run of 5 games of having lost to them. And then that really clicked things into gear, and they went on and won the title. Here's, I think, very similar. So Libertad, we just talked about how good they are, but Olimpia are unbeaten at home in 20 games. They're not going to let this game get away from them easily at home, as they have proved time and again. Even against Cerro as well, and the Super Clásico was similar. Like we were saying, they weren't the best team, but they managed to get the draw out of it. But what we have is, I think, both teams now have defensive issues. Why the Libertad have the defensive issue? Well, Diego Vieira is the latest victim of chikungunya, which everybody seems to have. 2 Olimpia players have it, Zavala and Ale Silva, and now Diego Vieira is not going to play. So they have to bring in Gilberto Flores, who's the under-20s Paraguay international. And he might go up against Alan Wilk, who got his debut for Olimpia. So he's the under-20s Paraguay striker. So that's kind of interesting to see. Those 2 could end up facing off. And with Olimpia, the defensive issues, I mean, Salcedo's out with his ligament injury. Junior Barreto was the signing. He hasn't impressed. He sat on the bench last game. Zarate, whenever he plays, he doesn't really fill me with confidence. He's more likely to get a yellow card than do something good. So they're having all these issues. And so I think what we might see here is a game where who can manage to outscore the other team might be the one that gets it. So you might need some magic from Derlis Gonzalez, which is always possible, or you might get some magic from, say, Lorenzo Melgarejo. So we're gonna have to see which way it goes. But I think it could be who's able to outscore their opponents in tomorrow's game. Is it tomorrow? Well, no, Sunday's game.
This weekend is going to be definitely one to look out for, obviously, with two games really within 2 weeks, really being title deciders in that way. And if Libertad can demonstrate that they are the ones to beat, or that there could be a surprise for other teams that they could say, hey, you know, this race isn't over yet. So we'll see what happens there on. I do want to close out on, obviously, I wanted to talk about where I was last week. I was fortunate enough to go to Newcastle last weekend to watch Newcastle against Wolverhampton Wanderers in a really good game, 2-1 win for Newcastle. Obviously, the big thing was coming to see Miguel Almiron. Didn't start the game, obviously didn't play the first half with Newcastle United under Eddie Howe. Comes in the 65th minute, and, you know, obviously Newcastle were up 1-1 when he first came in. Alexander Isak getting the goal, Juan Hichan getting it for Wolverhampton Wanderers. But then in the 80th minute, Almiron scoring right there, right in front of the Newcastle faithful, really sending a message, I would say. You know, obviously they'll be playing today as we record against Nottingham Forest. It's 11 goals right now for Miguel Almiron. I think his best, or at least one goal from his best overall goal tally ever since he went to Newcastle. I think his best goals was like 12 or something with Atlanta. But, you know, Rob, I mean, this has been good. I mean, obviously it's always great to see a Paraguayan score, and for me to do it in front of me is great. But just strictly speaking on just for him as a whole, I mean, I think definitely getting that goal is big for him. And, you know, obviously now they're still technically in a race for top four. They're still trying to see if they can qualify for the Champions League, which again would be huge for them. But I think really, I mean, we don't want to go into a Newcastle podcast right now or anything like that, but it seems that Almiron is becoming the game changer, or if this just seems to be something that Eddie Howe seems like saying that, hey, you know, this is someone that we could trust on as a super sub as well, or as a starter. So it's a win-win, I would say.
Yeah, it is a win-win. And it's funny, actually, I realized we haven't talked about this, but he will be coming back to Paraguay soon, because we've got the friendly against Chile in Santiago. And I think actually we're recording on a Friday. It should be today that we hear of who will be at least the foreign players for that squad. So it's thinking not just of Newcastle, but for Paraguay, it's also good news as well. And I don't know, you were there, Roberto, but I don't know why all of a sudden he didn't start this game, because he'd been playing pretty regularly. Maybe it was just a rest, or maybe it was tactical. But either way, he's forced Eddie Howe's hand, and he has to be a starter again, because if you come on and score the winner, you're doing the business, and you're going to be playing again. So yeah, I mean, it's really good for Paraguay, the national team, just thinking again from that, to have players performing well in the top leagues. You have Tony Sanabria is actually doing quite well with Torino, which is a change as well. So we've really got this kind of base, I suppose, of players.
So you would call Tony Sanabria back to the national team, Ralph?
Well, yeah, Maria's not here, so so I'm safe to say I think I would at the moment, yeah, because he's on form. So you're gonna have to give him that shot. But there's a lot of other players that could be there. Roberto just put in the chat Pita, Isidro Pita, who's actually, in terms of the number 9, statistically, he's playing the best. He's scoring goals in Brazil. It's always hard with Brazil when it's the state championships. Honestly, the level, depending which state you're in, and Cuiabá is not a great kind of level, but he's doing it. He's scoring the goals, so we might have to see that. I mean, yeah, I don't know if we want to go into the whole Albiroja chat right now, but it's promising. And going back to Almiron, I think again he's showing his character. A lot of people, I think, in England didn't realize what kind of a competitor and a winner he was, because sometimes you have a stereotype in England about players from South America are not, oh, maybe they don't like the weather, or they're not so interested. They don't understand what the football is really like in Paraguay. It's hard, it's physical, it's competitive, and he had won everywhere he went. And it was another good test of character, I think, to come off the bench and score the winner. And I bet Roberto was happy, that you got to see that in real life.
I don't know if Roberto can tell me, because he's from Connecticut. He's not that much of Paraguayan as in the case of tolerating cold weather, but he was just telling us off the air that he was freezing his butt off over there in the UK. So I wouldn't know how cold it really is over there for a player like Almiron that's usually accustomed to really warm weather. Is it really that uncomfortable in Newcastle for a player like Almiron?
I mean, for me, maybe it's just me being a wimp and saying that I don't know why I didn't manage it. I mean, that was fine. It's just, the fact that I was able to get sick afterwards wasn't exactly the best explanation I can get. But yeah, I mean, look, it's difficult, and that's why I always applaud a lot of the players who make that jump from South America from regions that aren't used to that type of cold. To make that big of a jump is big, but. Yeah, I think, for him to do that demonstrates that, I think he's one for him to stay off to the new contract, was able to demonstrate that. And I think we'll wait and see how they do, how this would really be a huge thing
really
to go to the Champions League.
Roberto?
I would say so. I would say I've spoken. Yeah, I mean,
really the big star.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people, and I haven't heard one negative thing about him. And, I was able to get some photos of flags and just the way that people are acting. And yeah, they're behind the team as a whole. I don't think there's a standout player, but if they had to choose one, I'd have to be Miggy, just because of the way that he plays, the way that he looks. He's always smiling. He has that energy, the fact that he never gave up. It seems like he's entering that status of cult hero, and we'll wait and see what happens to Newcastle if they can ever win a trophy under this new ownership. But he has the potential to be up there amongst one of their cult heroes. Maybe not the best of all time to be like Shearer and all those other guys, but he's definitely up there. And it's good to see a Paraguayan get that kind of love. I mean, you don't really see that with a lot of Paraguayans in various clubs outside abroad. I mean, you get that sometimes with Oscar Cardoso, who was at Benfica. I'm trying to think even maybe a Chilavert at Vélez Sarsfield and many others. So there are those kind of exceptions, but I think for someone to do this in the Premier League and the most competitive league in the world, I think is a testament to how good he has been. So it's good to see, and hopefully his run of scoring continues, even if I'm not there, even if I have to be back in Connecticut to watch on TV. But guys, it was a great episode as always of Guarani Vision. A lot of things that we talked about as always. Make sure to like, subscribe, give a comment. We always appreciate your support. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.